Domino is a member of the Oakland-based hip-hop collective Hieroglyphics, working as a producer, DJ and manager for the group. This interview was done a few years ago as part of a research project which ultimately led to the idea for this podcast, and I'm so grateful for Domino for taking the time out to do this. As well as discussing the relationships between music and well-being, Domino also speaks about a few topics such as changes in music technology and culture and how it's affected the product and consumption of music, as well as discussing his own music listening habits and that unknown thing that makes certain songs so special. He also shares some of his most memorable moments from his life and career in music. I hope you enjoy and gain something from this interview. And here it is.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Cool, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. Sorry about that, man. Had to clean up and then just lost track of the time.
Yeah, no worries. It's been crazy. I'm in the UK and obviously I'm trying to manage the time difference. That's why I got mixed up earlier.
Oh, I got you. Because you were like, I'm waiting. And I was like, I'll be here at 6.
Yeah.
I was like, hey,
I was like an hour extra,
Yeah.
All right, all good anyway. So yeah, basically it's a research project on the links between music and well-being. And I want to kind of go in beyond the surface of saying, listen to Bob Marley and you'll be happy. But it's like, what is it about that that's affecting us neurologically and hormonally and all these things that, has a certain impact. So to just say, how can we more consciously use music to help us, get through traumas or understand experiences and even regulate our own emotions. So first thing I wanted to ask is, when you think of the words well-being and music, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Escapism, maybe. Escapism, reflection, soothing. I mean, it really depends also on what type of music. I think every type of music in the different, can give you a different vibe.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so like, it's hard to just quantify. And you might say, well, how does, Everyone Loves the Sunshine make you feel? Then you can,
I like to kind of consider, the music that we listen to in our life as like the soundtrack to our lives as well. So in that sense, do you feel like the music that you listen to and the music that you make, does that say anything about you as a person or your identity at all?
With me, it's different because I tend to like variety, right? And so I listen to, like I'd say that I listen to pretty much every genre of music at some time. Like basically anything that I like, I put on, I have like a bunch of playlists that have, virtually everything that I want to hear. And I'm one of those people that likes to listen to it on random. And so like 1 minute you'll hear like, Ice Cube. And then the next minute you'll hear, some jazz, Roy Ayers, or you'll hear Miles, or then next thing you know, you might hear Johnny Cash or Fleetwood Mac or Bob Marley, like it literally, or comedy or whatever. That's how I like to listen to music. And every once in a while I might like kind of have it more focused. But in general, 80% of the time that I listen to music, it's pretty much my library on shuffle. And so that being said, there are moments of time where I feel like I'm in a certain vibe that I want to hear a certain thing, and a lot of times it's, when you're, for instance, if I'm going to bed, generally you want something more relaxing, something more chill, not as much in your face. Whereas if I'm working out, I want something up tempo, something a little bit more intense, something dramatic, I'm one of those type of people that I don't like to listen to the same thing over and over. Like I have a lot of friends that they like a record, they listen to it all the time, you know what I'm saying? Especially when it's fresh. I'm not like that. I like listen to a record and then I want it to, hopefully it'll come back to me at some point. But like I generally like variety. Because there's so much good music out there. And I feel like if I have to stop and think about what I want to hear, then what am I missing too? You know what I mean? And so every once in a while, when you listen to music on random, one of the great things is something will come on. I'll be like, damn, I forgot about this song.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, I guess it's not a good answer to your question, but I guess that, the way that I think of it is imagine if you were able to choose 100 songs that you were going to listen to, the next 100 songs you would listen to. right? That would take a long time to hear those 100 songs, right? Now, how many songs that are great that it would never jump in your mind to listen to? And I think that's one of the main things with me is that I don't want to just listen to what's consciously in my mind. Because like if you go, if I had to name 100 songs, I can name 100 songs.
Yeah.
But what about the other 100? What about the 300th song that I didn't think of that I would love to hear, that hopefully that just shows up? And I'm like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of one of the great things ever since I first got an iPod. That was the thing that I loved most about it. It was like, yo, I can listen to my playlist on shuffle and not even have to, just be surprised, pleasantly surprised. I mean, I curate my things, so I'm not like, there's not things coming on that where I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear this. You know what I mean? But yeah, so anyway.
So for you guys, the reason why I wanted to get artists, producers and writers and things involved in this is because you guys have a quite unique perspective on this in terms of through all the stuff that you guys have created, you've actually birthed a whole community that just keeps on growing. And, for 30 years, it's still here and it's still going strong. For example, like Hiero Day, when you see so many people come together for that, what kind of things go through your mind? Like, it was just as few guys and look what it's turned into.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of a reflection on the equity that we've built with the people that listen to our music, and particularly Oakland, in Oakland. You know what I mean? I think that like people could pick and choose what they want to hear and what they want to support. And so I can never take that for granted. I always think, man, it's kind of like makes me smile because it means that our music means something to people. Yeah. Just like the Hiero tattoos, when people show up with Hiero tattoos, that says a lot about how your music touched people. And so, if you talk about, like you said, approaching 30 years, it's like, wow, like how much music equity do you have to build up to still be having people support you? Yeah. And it means, and it means that we've deposited a lot into there throughout the years, and that we're still drawing from it. And that's the main thing I think about, and also the fact that it's also being passed down, where people are like, oh yeah, I love you because my brother used to play it, or now it's because my pops was playing y'all. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's crazy.
And somebody was like, I was selling these cassettes, these
the tapes,
cassettes. Yeah, like someone was telling me, he goes, yeah, like my father's from Oakland. He loves y'all too. Wow. You know what I mean? And so like, that's the type of shit that's always like, wow, that's dope. You know what I mean? One thing I want to say on that, and this is something me and my friends talk about a lot, is that one of the things that I think that is and I'm not like one of those people purists who's like everything now sucks, it's not as, of course, I'm going to think what the music that came out when I was in my 20s and teens is going to be the best. Everyone from the music from their era always thinks that. Yeah. But I think one of the main difference between kids now is that when we were kids, you were kind of forced to listen to what your parents listened to. So like if your parents were cleaning around the house, they were listening to what, if you know what I mean, on a Saturday or Sunday, you were listening to what they're listening to. If you guys went on a road trip, you were listening to whatever was on the radio that your parents were deciding. But now everyone has their own personal headphones and their own personal music player. So kids are putting on their headphones and they're only listening to the things that they know. They're not being exposed to all this other music like we were in our generation, which I think, I don't think is a good thing, because I think that, everyone's going to always gravitate to the music that's theirs. But that extra exposure that I got, that I give my kids, you know what I'm saying, that you're giving your nephews, you know what I mean, that helps them become well-rounded musically and be able to not just be pigeonholed, to what's popular and what's not. Because generally what's getting played for the masses is not really, that's not the wheat bread. You know what I'm saying?
I think there's more mainstream stuff that's pushed on people than ever before, I feel like.
I don't know if it's ever before. I think the different, I think the difference is that it's a lot, it's good and bad, right? With the social media and the internet, it's a lot easier to just get your music heard. Just, you got some kid put some on YouTube and it generates followers.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you kind of had to go through, industry people, record radio stations, record companies to get heard at all, which wasn't always a good thing. The one positive about that is generally you had people who were curating what was going to get out there. And for, and so there was good and bad. A lot of the stuff they were able to choose a lot of the best stuff that they were going to expose and got chose or even got signed at all. You generally had to have some ability. Now to me, it's music in a way is no different than these people who are, all these people that got 1 million followers for just doing funny tricks on TikTok. You know what I mean? Like they're as popular as anybody, and what are they really doing? You know what I mean? And so it's like that with music, is that you can just do something that catches people, and it doesn't mean that you've put time into your craft. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you have done something that was able to grasp on to a mass that gets passed on, and all of a sudden it's viral. But it's kind of no different than the person who puts up cat videos.
I think that's the thing that kind of makes me sad about the direction things have gone. And like you're saying, how easy it is to get noticed now by doing things like that. Do you think that damaged a lot of the soul of music?
Here's the thing, right? These type of conversations, right? It's like you and I are talking about it from our perspective, right? And in general, kids don't have the perspective that we have. And so, yeah, you know what? It probably has damaged the soul of the music. You know what I'm saying? But does that, that's what we're supposed to think.
Yeah.
And a kid doesn't have that perspective. And so it's going to be hard for us, you and I, to not be looked at as just the guy, get off, the old guy who complains that music isn't as good as it used to, because every generation has done this, right? And so the way that I try to quantify it is I say, hey, what's this music? Most of it isn't being made for me. It's not for me. You know what I mean? Just like, when rap started, just like fucking, Melly Mel and all them, it wasn't for the urban crowd who had never heard rap. They were like, what the hell is this bullshit? You know what I'm saying? And this goes on every generation.
Every generation has it, yeah.
And so it's like, it really doesn't serve any purpose other than for you and I to kind of preach to the choir about, I was on a Clubhouse room, and it was about like, how do we get soul, soul back into, R&B back into urban music. And I was like, is it supposed to be back? What I'm saying is that the soul and the soul of R&B music, that is how we view it. Right. And so, yeah, of course, we gonna think it needs to be there. But the younger generation who doesn't have that perspective, music is supposed to change. It's never supposed to stay the same. And so you got to view it like that. It's like, you know what, that stuff, Tekashi 69 and all this other trap stuff, that's not for me. That's not what I like. And so I just assume it's not for me, as opposed to trying to force them to do what I like. I look for people that are doing things that interest me. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, you just, like I said, you sound like a bitter old guy. Who you sound like your parents were about your music. You know what I'm saying? And their parents were about their music.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It serves no purpose, I don't think. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you know what? I would like hip hop to have more substance. You know what I'm saying? I would like hip hop to have more grit, whatever I want. But that's my perspective.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get a kid who didn't have the same influences to
that's true.
feel that.
No, it's crazy. I never thought of it like that. Like, for you, how long, or can you remember when you kind of realized that, when you came to that point where, I've just realized I'm just being that bitter old man. I need to kind of just let it go.
I mean, I don't know when, but I think that I just know I don't know when it was, but I just realized that every generation is going to think their music's the best, and anything, and then when it branches off into something else, people are going to say how terrible it is. I mean, think about this, right? Jazz purists thought Donald Byrd, Spaces and Places, that type of, and Roy Ayers and Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, they thought all that shit was crap. You know what I'm saying? And they were like, this is terrible. Like, what are they doing? You know what I mean? This isn't jazz. You know what I'm saying? And it's no different than us saying, what the fuck's this? This isn't hip hop. You know what I'm saying? It's natural. Nothing stays the same. And music is always going to evolve. And either you get with it or you just be happy listening with your stuff. You know what I mean? And I just feel, I think a lot of it too is seeing how people react to certain things that's new. And in my mind, I go, you just sound bitter. You know what I mean? And I just always I didn't want to sound like that. I didn't want to be the dude who was like, it ain't like it was in my day. Like, I just don't want to be that guy. Because I don't think it serves any purpose. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no one benefits from that.
Well, yeah, and a younger person's not going to feel me, and the people and I'm just going to be talking we're going to be talking amongst ourselves. Everyone who agrees with that's going to be like, hell yeah, it wasn't like when, Wu-Tang first came, you know what I mean? Like, it serves no purpose.
I think guys used to say that about Hyro when Hyro first came out. People in the Bay used to kind of, talk shit on you guys as well back then, because you guys were all doing something a bit different. So
yeah, people I've had that conversation with people today that talk about how Hyro ain't really Bay Area. I'm like, man, that's such a short-sighted view. It's like, why does the Bay have to be one thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so, no, that's true. You know what I'm saying? That we got embraced by East Coast cats more in LA more than we did the Bay at first, I mean, don't get me wrong, like we had love in the Bay. But I just think that it wasn't the normal thing that people listen to in the Bay. So we were getting played on the radio a little bit, and people were playing us. But the main, they were still playing more Too Short and E40 more than us. I just think that at that time, if you weren't sounding that way, then you sounded like you're from the East Coast. And I think that just cats were like, oh, these dudes they just sound like they from the East Coast. And so that was a reason to not like it. You know what I'm saying? Like they ain't trying to sound real, The thing is that they didn't, what people didn't have the perspective to see is we opened the doors for more people to appreciate stuff from the West Coast and the Bay Area. You know what I mean? Like, and that led them to kind of like be able to embrace, it was almost like we were a conduit for them to be able to accept the DJ Quicks and, even more, you know what I'm saying, than and E40s and all that. Like people were like, oh, the Bay's doing something interesting, you know what I mean? And so I don't think people who have that attitude realize how much we rep from the Bay and garnered respect for the Bay by people that weren't giving it in the beginning,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe like retrospectively, people do realize, they've been doing this for nearly 30 years. They've been bringing more people in, opening more doors and things like that. So like hindsight, I guess a lot of the time, you realize it later down the line, what people have actually done.
I think the hindsight now is that I think people, even they may not listen to our music. I think they respect what we've done. And they've also, a lot of people, I think a lot of what opened a lot of people's eyes is when people that they respect show the respect for us. When you got like, Outkast and Eminem and Snoop and all these groups that are a lot bigger than us, you should talk about how we influenced them or how we mattered, or when we, it's like people, I think people are proud of that because now they could say, hey, they're from the Bay, and we respect that we get lifts it forever for the Bay in general. And so I think people nowadays just be like, yo, they did their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they may not listen to us, but they respect what
But
we've
they
done.
respect what you've done. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This sort of underlying impact that you guys have had and throughout your journey in music, have you ever kind of witnessed or seen or experienced something where like you felt it for sure, like you knew something was happening, but you just couldn't quite put your finger on, what is happening here? From the minute the sound leaves the speakers to go into their ears, what makes people just respond to music in the ways that they do?
I think a lot of people respect that we were doing something different. And again, it comes down to putting out good music first and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't care what you're talking about, what you got. If you have a good song, people are going to react to it. If it moves them, they're going to react to it. I don't think, I think that, yeah, I think that there's things about, you know, talking about people stuff that people relate to, like neighborhood or whatever, like talking about the Bay, there's all those things, using slang that's local, all that stuff works, but it still comes down to a good song. You have to have a really good song, and that's first and foremost. You have to connect to people that way, and then all those other things, yeah, I think they're like little seasoning in the pots to give people more reason to connect to stuff. Ultimately, they got to hear that groove. They got to be moved by it, caught by the hook, as they say. And then I think those are the things. I don't think you can get caught up in all the different reasons, but ultimately it comes down to a good song is a good song.
Yeah,
93 Till Infinity is a great song, right? And that's why people still revere it. In fact, I think it's more popular now than it's ever been. Yeah, I mean, it was a hit in the 90s, but it wasn't like considered no classic. It wasn't like the things, it wasn't getting played everywhere and every hip hop jam. It wasn't. I remember, you know what I mean? We felt like it was great, but we felt like, okay, this is the beginning. You know what I mean? Like it never felt like no super smash hit. And it actually wasn't a super smash hit. It was a marginal hit, but I think that it was probably a little ahead of its time, which is why I think it took for a lot of people. It transcended, and I just think people love it more than ever.
There's something about that song in particular that it just leaves people speechless. Like I still don't know how to describe that song because it's just something else. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever have the words to describe it.
I mean, in hindsight, there's a bunch of reasons. One is that I think that you hit one thing you hit on is that it doesn't sound like anything else. Like that song does not. You can't pull another song and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of sounds like 93 Till. I mean, I guess after you might have been able to say that, but in general, that song is a very unique hip hop song, right? It doesn't have a similar vibe than anything else. The other thing about it is I think that and shout out to A+, the sample and the way that he flipped it, a song called Heather by Billy Cobham. It's a lot slower, but the melody, it's a very moving song, right? It's very dramatic. It's very there's a lot of emotion in that sample, the way that he was used. And I think that's a lot of it. I think that you can have certain melodies and they can bring out emotion in people. This goes back to kind of like where we started with this interview, is that that particular melody and groove, I think brings out emotion of people, and it's positive emotion. And I think also another thing about the song that I think people love is that there's a certain nostalgia that's connected to it, and kind of like a feeling of forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, good music is puts you at a time and a place. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things. Again, you go back to melody and drama. Like there's certain chords or certain kind of feels in a certain melody that gives you a certain, just like look at Shook Ones, for instance. That sample, that little it gives you a very dark feeling. You know what I mean? And what makes a song great is they took that and then they rapped in a way that almost put a stamp on that vibe. You know what I'm saying? And that's just as important too, is because you
Oh
could
yeah.
be like, oh, there's this group, like it's important that if you get a instrumental song that gives you a certain feeling, that you don't take away from it by rapping about something or singing about something that is against that vibe.
Yeah.
And I think they knocked it out of the park
Oh,
on Shook
definitely.
One,
Yeah.
93 Till Infinity. They knocked it out of the park, and that's one of the reasons why these songs are so connect to people, because they get that feel, and that's
Yeah.
what they want to feel. Another one, Annie Up. Another one. There's a handful of songs that you go, wow, like I feel what they're saying. Not
Yeah.
only I'm hearing, I'm
Yeah, I'm feeling
feeling
it.
it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's another thing you mentioned as well when you're talking about the melodies in particular, and especially like different instruments. For example, when you hear like pianos or harps and stuff, that gets through to you in a way that drums don't, or that a hi-hat won't, or something. Like Five on It, for example, I heard that when I was probably 9 years old, and just the piano in that's something that kind of just haunted me and just stuck with me for life. Like I'll probably have that tune, in my last few days. These handful of songs where it's weird. This is what music does to me. It just leaves me speechless sometimes. It kind of.
Well, see, that's the great thing, right? It moves you, and you don't know why. You don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
explain. It's just,
This is what this whole thing is about. This
but
is what I want to find out.
this is why great songs are great songs, and not just great. There's a lot of great songs, but songs that transcend. They're the great of the great. Songs like "What's Going On," right? Now
Yeah.
you listen to that song, and we've all heard it a million times, but that song is that song is, you feel it, it just speaks to what he's saying, the group,
Yeah.
everything about it, the harmonies. And that's those songs are just, that's they're great, you know what I'm saying? And songs like that, right, it doesn't really matter about where they chart. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, they need to be exposed, but songs like that start to transcend. Once you get past the years of them charting, then you find, and you find what songs are the real good songs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The songs that you get to 20 years, people are still going crazy. New generations are picking them up. You could talk. There's and the interesting thing, like from someone like me who's involved in sampling, like there's these songs that, because of hip hop and also because of DJs, were songs that weren't ever even hits, that somehow or another just got missed or
Yeah.
didn't get a chance, that are like amazing classic songs. It's not just about what's the most popular. It's like once these songs, you get exposed, and the great songs last longer than the song. There's plenty of songs that were #1 on the Billboard charts that no one gives a shit about no more. Then there's a bunch of songs like 92 Infinity that never were in the top 100 pop charts that everyone plays still.
Yeah. I think that's another thing about, especially with hip hop, because obviously, the foundations of it are sample everything. And I think this is something I've always appreciated about it. It's led me to so much music that I probably would never have looked at before.
Well, yeah, because if you're a kid who grew up in the 90s, let's say you're 10, 12 years old in the early 90s and people start sampling, it's understandable that your first taste of certain songs is going to be through hip hop, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I could go on and on. Like White Lines, I never knew that that was a replay of Liquid, a whole nother song. It was just like, oh wow, that's cool. There's so many songs like that where you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that that's derived from somewhere. You know what I mean? And so that's natural. And yeah, hip hop's done that. Because I remember playing a song for my dad where he goes, it was a Pumpkin and the Profile All Stars. That's how obscure it is. Something from like 1985, right? It was on Profile. And they have a part where they go, all we need is a drummer to give us a funky beat. And my dad's like, oh, that's from Sly Stone. And I didn't I didn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. There's so many. And even now, I'm still getting amazed. Like I just recently, I didn't know that So Fresh and So Clean was that hook was taken from from a song, right? Not what they were saying, but the melody. Ain't
Oh,
nobody don't fly. That's Joe Simon. That's a Joe Simon song. And it just came on one day. And, no, I was like looking through Spotify, and you know how they recommend songs, based on whatever you listen to.
yeah.
And I just clicked it and I was like, oh shit, that's the So Fresh and So Clean hook. They got it from there. I didn't know that. Even now, that was like 2 years ago or a year ago.
That's
and
crazy.
so that's the great thing. That's the great thing. And hopefully, I think that one of the things about hip hop fans is that you're right. It allowed us to be a little bit more open-minded to other genres of music, because you're like, oh, okay, fuck, what's this? Black AC/DC, Back in Black. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't gonna listen to AC/DC. That was like the other kids, the white kids who had the AC/DC shirts, who were weird to me. You know what I mean? But then you start, you start hearing like all this stuff sampled and used in a certain way that allows you to kind of like appreciate it. And then you go and you start realizing there's more to AC/DC or Led Zeppelin or Johnny Cash or whatever that you can connect to, and that's important.
I've always seen it's interesting. Interesting you mention like the rock side of it, because I've always thought there's a lot of parallels between hip hop and rock, particularly punk rock music, because they kind of actually emerged at the same time, and I think for the same reasons. Because what was going on here in the kind of late 60s, early 70s, and there was this anger that was building up, and it came out as punk rock music. These young kids at that time had something to shout about, and they did it through music.
Yeah, the angst of youth, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't have anything in the South Bronx, no school, no music in school, and so they went and they found their own thing, and they expressed. They needed a way to express themselves, and people are always going to find a way.
But I'll try and wrap it up. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'll finish on a more light-hearted note. So one thing I just wanted to ask you was, throughout your kind of career in music, is there anything off the top of your head that stands out as a particularly memorable moment, like something that was either just really crazy or really funny or unexpected?
I mean, the thing I always go back to was our first major tour, Souls of Mischief, was with Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul. And so like that's always going to be memorable, because we're a new group and we're instantly on tour, and basically, with peers, with groups that we looked up to, that are, after, that respected us enough to bring us on the road, and they were like our peers, you know what I mean? And they embraced us, they respected our music, and that'll always be probably the highlight of my, of my musical career, because of the fact that it was like I looked up to those groups you know what I'm saying?
How did you guys how did that talk come about? How did you guys get on?
I think it had a lot to do with Jive Records, who Tribe was also on Jive. I think they were pushing it, and the 93 Till Infinity was a good record. Like, I think that it really came down to the fact that there was pressure on trying to get us to go on the tour, and I think that Tribe and De La liked the record and liked us, and they they knew Dell too. Tip knew Dell, like, you know what I mean. And so I just think that I think a little bit of it was pushing by our label, but I also think a lot of it was that they dug us. I mean, not a lot of it. That's the main reason it happened.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Is because they liked what we were doing, and they respected our music, is why they brought us on the tour.
And at the very beginning as well, how was that? Easy or hard to deal with, or?
I don't know, like, they showed us a lot of love, so that made it a lot easier, I think. I don't think they treated us like this young opening group. I think they looked out after us. They knew we were young. They knew, we were, out there roughing it, more or less, and like, I don't have no negative thoughts about it. I mean, they showed us love, and we did our held our own musically and during the show. And so I still have great relationship, particularly with the guys in De La,
Yeah.
but like I have, I still have relationships with all of them, so, rest in peace, Fife. But
Yeah.
when you're on tour with somebody for such a long time, for months, you know what I mean, you get you connect with them, you have a bond, and so that's one of the reasons why that'll always be the thing that whenever anyone asks me that question, that's the first thing that I think of. Like, like that, because I mean, just think of it,
No, I'm not surprised.
Midnight Marauder tour, Midnight Marauder Balloon Mind State tour, like, you know what I mean?
Crazy,
yeah, so it was just like, it's like it's almost like being like one of the groups that was at Woodstock, you know what I mean? It was like right place, right time, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
In hindsight, think about being it. Imagine those 3 albums just dropping and that tour shows up in your city, you'd be like, holy shit, But the interesting thing about it, though, is that there was a lot of cities that we were playing small ass venues too,
All right.
because everyone thinks that like a lot of those. The interesting thing about the early '90s and hip hop is that a lot of the shit that's revered now wasn't necessarily revered. Like the heads like Tribe, and they were popular. Don't get me wrong. They had gold and platinum records, but it wasn't like they were the biggest groups, you know what I mean, in the world, you know what I mean? Like, it's just what happens is over time that, you think that Tribe are like this classic group, but, we were some venues, we were like 300-400 people, Yeah. So it wasn't, cause, hip hop wasn't, a lot of the underground stuff, you listen to like a war tour and you think that it was on the radio 24/7. No, it wasn't. The record Lexic Relaxation was not on the radio all the time. Like, you know what I mean? And so, a lot of people don't realize that this stuff wasn't totally accepted as huge pop hits and huge groups, It was interesting time. Music is basically a reflection of the time, right, that it's made. And so like that was what we were doing, whatever we were influenced by, the Public Enemies and the Eric B and Rakims and the Gang Stars, you know what I mean? And so we took what KRS-One, like we took the a little bit of whatever we like from everyone, and then we put what we thought our spin on it was, and then it came out with that, you know what I mean? And so I think a lot of it had to do with, because it was some West Coast stuff, guys were from the West Coast, but they were lyrical, and so they had the lyricism of maybe I think one of the things is that a lot of other markets outside of the East Coast were open and influenced by a lot of things, right? And so, Cube, Ice Cube's Dell's cousin. So he obviously is influenced by Cube. They were influenced by East Coast rappers. They were influenced by the Ghetto Boy. You know what I mean? And it was like, it's a little harder to quantify when a lot of that era, most groups in the East Coast were only listening to East Coast stuff. They thought everything that was coming out of the West Coast was whack for the most part. NWA and Ice-T maybe transcended that. But like for the most part, they were all in, you had a small area of New York influencing each other. You know what I'm saying? Where we came out, it was like something totally different, because they didn't have they didn't have slang like New Yorkers. They didn't rap about the things that New Yorkers rapped about. I mean, we were rapping about Sunny Meadows and, you know what I mean? And going to, you know what I mean? Berkeley, you know what I mean?
Even like, the videos, even today, still today, the videos from that album is just like, you never see nature in hip hop ever. Before or since. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. But that's one of the key things about, if you're gonna get influenced by something, but if you put what you have to do, what you're bringing to the table, and you focus on being original and different, and that was one of the things that we always focused on in that era. In general, it's always been like, yo, we different, let's be different, you know what I mean? And so if you accomplish that and then you make a good song, that's how you last, you know.
Yeah.
Because if you sound like someone else, you're only or if you sound like something that's hot at the time, how do you get out of that? How to get out of that moment, right? And the bottom line, man, everyone in Hyro is a really good writer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very good with the English language, and that that's one of the main reasons that, you know, Dell and all them dudes, they all said things that no one else was saying in a way that no one else was saying it. And you know, you had like 7 talented dudes all pushing each other, you know.
In the kind of writing sessions, I don't know what the process was, but did you guys ever like rewrite verses once you heard another one? Or because I know with Wu-Tang, they used to hear people's verses and be like, shit, I've got to go back and just come back hotter with this one.
I'm pretty sure that happened. I don't recall a specific time, but yeah, I mean, I just remember like cats used to be like, you got to come tight, you got to come tight. And I know that when someone would kick something, I'm sure, you know, I'm not a rapper, so it wasn't like I was writing a rap, but I'm sure they scribbled out some stuff because they felt like they needed to come tighter. That was always what people were saying. You got to come tight. You got to come tight. So I'm sure cats would second guess what they had after listening to someone else kick their shit. That definitely happened.
Well, I won't take any more of your time, but thank you so much for doing this. It's been invaluable.
Oh man, anytime, man. You know, like you say, it wouldn't happen 15 years ago, but it's so easy now that we might as well, you know. You know, like I said, like I'm always down to talk about it because it's good to, you know, get the word out there, and you know, so people know, you know, someone will listen to your thing and be like, you know, oh, this, let me check those guys out, you know.
That's what I'm hoping to do. I mean, I'm trying to, so I'll see where this goes. But anyway, we'll keep all you guys posted. I think I'm
just know there's not one way to do anything. That's the hard part about being able to read a book. You may be able to read a book about how 93 Till Infinity was made, or how the Chronic was made, or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? There's no one way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you could just read a book and do it, then anyone would be doing it.
Do it. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, you have to take a little bit of everything that you learn or you listen to, and the things that you personally like from something, and then you just add your personality and what makes it unique, what makes you unique to it. That's the important thing. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, like that's all you can do, because there's no one way. There's no one way to make a beat. There's no one machine to make a beat. There's no one, you know, topic. It's never ending. And so, you know, it'll be a never ending search to find out the secret behind these songs. So all you can do is take a little bit from them all.
Man. Well, thanks so much. I'll keep you posted on however this thing turns out anyway.
Okay. Yeah, man. Keep in touch.
Cheers, man. Take care.